Hello and a very warm welcome to an India Today special broadcast. It's a day of fast-paced developments and India-Canada relationship. They'd nosedived earlier. They've hit rock bottom. Big story here on India Today. India has decided to expel 6 top Canadian diplomats, including their acting High Commissioner, their Deputy High Commissioner, and 4 other top diplomats. India has decided to expel them, and this decision has just been announced moments ago. The government of India has decided to expel the 6 following Canadian diplomats. Is a statement that reads from the Ministry of External Affairs, and this includes Mr. Stuart Ross Wheeler, who's the acting High Commissioner, Mr. Patrick Herbert, the Deputy High Commissioner, Ms. Marie-Catherine Joly, who's the First Secretary, Mr. Ian Ross David Trites, again First Secretary, Mr. Adam James Chipka, First Secretary, and Ms. Paula Ujela, First Secretary. Not just have they been expelled, they've been given just 5 days' time, October 19th, midnight. They are to leave India or their diplomatic immunity will be withdrawn. That's a very strong statement that comes from Government of India asking the 6 top diplomats of Canada, including their acting High Commissioner, Mr. Stuart Ross Wheeler, to leave India in the next 5 days. And this comes after Canada had asked India's High Commissioner to Canada, Sanjay Verma, to join investigations in the Hardeep Nijjar murder case. And this is something that India found completely unacceptable. Now, there is a background to this, and over the course of the next 1 hour, we will give you the background of this big story where Justin Trudeau's popularity has nosedived. He's in big trouble politically within his country. There are at least 20 members of parliament of the Liberal Party who've signed a petition asking for his removal, and this comes after there are a series of allegations that have been made against Justin Trudeau's party. But I'll get you much more on that big story. But let's stick to the Nijjar story and India expelling 6 Canadian diplomats. India has said that these diplomats should leave our country in the next 5 days. Before I get you more on the story, let me also tell you, Canada has not shared information or details in the Nijjar case with India so far. They've made a lot of tall claims. They've talked of credible allegations, but only allegations, and no evidence has been shared with India. No details of investigations have been given, but they've made a lot of tall claims. Let's listen in to more such tall claims made by Canada. Listen in.
The Government of Canada has done what India has long been asking for. Canada has provided credible, irrefutable evidence of ties between agents of the Government of India and a murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. Now it is time for India to live up to what it said it would do and look into those allegations. It is in the interest of both our countries and the peoples of our countries to get to the bottom of this. Canada stands ready to cooperate with India.
And I quickly want to bring in India Today's Shiv Arur for more on this big story. Shiv, Shashank Mattu also joins us on this special broadcast. But Shiv, I want to come to you first. I want to understand from you, telling 6 diplomats to leave our country in 5 days' time, including the High Commissioner, the acting High Commissioner, the Deputy High Commissioner. This just goes on to show the Narendra Modi government means business. They're not letting Canada bully India. Very clearly, Shiv.
This is blown up in Canada's face for the kind of, blundering short-sightedness that Justin Trudeau has shown to pander to a particular class of so-called Khalistani terrorists as a vote bank in Canada, Gaurav. Justin Trudeau has basically opened a diplomatic front with the world's largest democracy. One does not need to be, have any feelings of nationalism to know that this is a terrible mistake that he has made, because India-Canada relations go far deeper than just Justin Trudeau, or the Indian government at this point of time. There are nearly 2 million persons of Indian origin, including Indian nationals, who live in Canada at this point of time. There are, nearly 500,000 Indian students who study in Canada. Huge number of remittances coming from, from Indians living in Canada back to their homes here. What Justin Trudeau has done is, in order to save himself, in order to try and hedge the risks to his political career in what is seen as almost a certain defeat on the horizon for him, politically speaking, in the next federal election in the country. He's basically declared war on a country like India that has never harmed anyone. So this is a total diplomatic collapse. It cannot get worse than this. Stuart Wheeler, who's the acting high commissioner, has been asked to get out of the country in the next 6 days, along with 5 other diplomats. India has also withdrawn top diplomats, including the High Commissioner Sanjay Verma from Ottawa, from Canada. There's a Washington Post piece saying that they've been asked to leave. India has said we've withdrawn them. That's a different matter. The fact is, a collapse has taken place, and this has escalated very rapidly, Gaurav. The fact is that India has said explicitly, not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times since September last year, that Canada has failed to provide us the smallest shred of evidence following the allegations that it had leveled regarding an alleged Indian involvement in the killing of Khalistani terrorist, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And India has said, show us the evidence and we'll be able to cooperate in anything that you want, but no evidence has come forward so far. So the initiative has been with
Shiv,
Canada.
stay with me.
The initiative
That's
has been
the
with
big
Trudeau,
point.
and
That's
India
the big point. And no evidence was shared with India. Initially, what did Canada say? There's credible allegations. What are credible allegations? It's either credible information, credible intelligence, credible evidence, or just allegations. There cannot be credible allegations. And imagine, this is what Canada as a country is saying. And what did Canada expect? That Canada could get the United States and Five Eyes to mount diplomatic pressure on India. Clearly not happening in 21st century India, that a white man's word will be taken as gospel. India says, give us evidence. And I want to bring in Shashank Mattu for more on this. Shashank, has Canada shared any evidence with India, or is it just tall claims of Justin Trudeau, who's desperate in his country, where his own party MPs are writing letters? 20 have written, and perhaps another 20 waiting to write that letter to say they have absolutely no confidence in his leadership. And even Jagmeet Singh has withdrawn support and yet remains tacitly in support. So it's the Khalistani vote bank. Imagine a prime minister who's dependent on a Khalistani terror vote bank to remain in power, and is damning countries' ties with India on that ties. But tell us any evidence that Canada share with India.
Right. So India has been extremely clear about this, that it does not believe that any of the intelligence that Canada may or may not have provided is actionable in any single way. India has actually said in its statement, very strongly worded statement that it put out, that it has come to the conclusion that Canada is really essentially out to smear India and India's reputation, because any of the intelligence, you heard the acting high commissioner say that they have provided credible evidence and irrefutable evidence, in fact, going so far as to say that. But India has been extremely clear in that statement, leaving no doubt about the fact that it believes that these are just campaigns to smear India. It has not provided the kind of evidence that India would need to act on anything at all. And in fact, Gaurav, I've been talking to senior diplomats, and all of them say that, look, this thing is completely fishy. The idea that, the Indian high commissioner would be somehow involved in matters of intelligence, when diplomacy and intelligence are different spheres, people handle different spheres of responsibility. It just does not pass the smell test. Yes, Canada has for the last year continued to follow this narrative. It has not provided evidence. It has not worked with the Indian government in the way that other countries have when similar matters are raised with India. So Canada has failed in those elementary responsibilities. There are threats being made to the lives of Indian diplomats, and instead of working on those threats, what Canada is doing instead is saying...
No, but there is no ambiguity. No, Shashank, hold on. There cannot be may or may not have provided. There can be no ambiguity in relationships between two countries, and especially when it comes to when things come to such a pass that you are expelling each other's top diplomats, from high commissioners to deputy high commissioners. So Shiv, there is no question of may or may not have provided. Canada has either provided credible evidence, or it is only verbally talking about credible allegations. And Shiv, in international diplomacy, there is nothing called credible allegations. There is either evidence that will pass the scrutiny in a court of law, or there are allegations. Canada very clearly appears to be trying to browbeat India, and the Narendra Modi government refuses to be browbeaten by a very desperate Justin Trudeau, it seems, Shiv.
Gaurav, Justin Trudeau, by using the phrase credible allegation, he kind of set the stage and set the mood for the credibility that he enjoys or doesn't enjoy. And, it has been downhill for him ever since that point. Now, if you look at the statement that's been put out by the by the Canadian investigators right now, where they're talking about violent criminal activity occurring in Canada with connections to agents of the government of India. They talk about members of the pro-Khalistan movement. Before this statement came out, and this statement actually doesn't carry any specifics whatsoever. It's just got very, very broad strokes supporting Canada's escalation, diplomatically speaking. Not a single thing. We are certain about this because it is not possible for one country to share information with another country and for that second country to keep it secret. Because so far, if Canada had shared even a shred of evidence of any kind, in the face of repeated denials from India, given how irresponsible Canada has been under the Trudeau administration, its foreign office would have 100% by now, Gaurav, you and I both know, put out some information saying, देखो, हमने ये share किया है, देखो, ये dossier है, हमने उनको भेजा है, and they are lying to their people and saying that nothing has been shared. So Canada has been called out. Trudeau has been called out. Their foreign office has been called out. The state instruments like the police, the investigators in Canada are like in any other country. They are ultimately instruments of the serving government, and they are serving Trudeau. Trudeau has a personal war. He has a personal war of existential survival, of relevance. He's been humiliated in public by Jagmeet Singh, as you mentioned just a short while ago. He's got a real scare as far as the stability of his sarkar is concerned in Canada, and therefore he is firebombing now. This is a dictionary example of diplomatic firebombing, trying to make a big show of some kind of big splash in order to, in some ways, seduce the Khalistani terrorist community in Canada, and therefore, trying to tell them that I am still your friend, even when someone like a Jagmeet Singh has ditched him in public. That's what this is about. No surprises.
And Liberal Party MPs, 20 of them have already signed a letter, and there are reports in the Canadian media, and Terry Milivsky, who joins us on the broadcast, and Jagmeet Singh, who joins us on the broadcast, can tell us more. Apparently, there are 20 more MPs waiting in the wings in Ottawa and in Montreal who are out to write a letter against Justin Trudeau. But I want to bring in our journalist friend from Canada, Jagvinder Singh, joining us for more. Jagvinder, what can you tell us? What kind of evidence has Canada shared with India, if at all?
First of all, this is Rajinder Saini. I am Chief Editor of Pravasi Media Group and joining you guys from
Rajinder Saini ji, go on. Yes, go on.
So what's your question, please?
Yes, Mr. Saini.
Hello.
What kind of evidence, if any, has Canada shared with India?
I can't hear.
Okay, give me a moment. We'll try and reestablish that link with Mr. Saini, but I want to bring in Terry Milivsky in this conversation. Terry, if you can hear me, sir, has Canada shared any evidence whatsoever with India? What do you make of Canada going after top Indian diplomats, saying that they are persons of interest as far as RCMP investigations are concerned, sir?
Well, there's no question that this has been a rolling blunder by the Canadian authorities. At first, having the Prime Minister's department say these credible allegations exist, providing no evidence in public, not even the vaguest idea of what the evidence is, which eroded his own ability. That was a year ago. Now facing inevitable defeat, as it seems, in the next election, probably next year. It seems, according to the Indian side anyway, that he's worsened the problem by now accusing, also without providing evidence, Indian diplomats of participation in the alleged murder for hire scheme, which previously was alleged to have involved organized crime. In other words, the evidence, such as it is provided by Canada, has been skimpy at best. I can't answer with certainty that they have provided no evidence at all to India. I find that most unlikely, particularly since a good deal of evidence is public. I'm referring to the American allegations, the U.S. Department of Justice indictment leveled against Nikhil Gupta for allegedly hiring organized criminals to go out and kill as part of the same plot as the one against the assassination of Gurpatwant Singh Panoon, the leader of Sikhs for Justice. What I'm saying to you is that The evidence is out there.
Yes.
And India, by the way, has said that we take that very seriously. That is the US indictment, which does not point its finger. It's not Trudeau. It does not point its finger. It says the Indian government is an employee of the Indian government. Whereas the Canadian Trudeau got up and made a speech about how unacceptable this was. So the short answer is I do not believe that Canada has given no evidence to the Indian side. It's the Indians who are saying that it's hard to believe, particularly since so much convincing evidence, wiretaps, texts, everything has been made public by the U.S. Department of. And don't kid yourselves. This is the same plot. There is abundant evidence on the table about this plot. India doesn't need to wait to give it to them. So I acknowledge that he has bungled handling of this matter. I think everyone does. But as for no evidence, I won't join you there. Sorry.
Fair enough. Let me bring in Abhijit Iyer Mitra also joining us on this broadcast. And Abhijit Iyer Mitra has been tracking developments on the story very, very closely. He's a prominent think tanker, senior fellow who joins us on the show. Abhijit, if government of India has any evidence, the way the Canadian government leaks like a sieve, some of it would have been put out in public domain by the Justin Trudeau government. The fact that they're claiming they've shared evidence and yet not put out anything in public domain, does this indicate that this is just a political tool in the hands of a very desperate Justin Trudeau?
Look, Justin Trudeau's a pyromaniac, right? He'll set fire to anything in order to save his own seat. That said, let's just examine the evidence out here. Why is our response to America so different from Canada? America said what it had to say publicly. They didn't hide it. They put it in a charge sheet, which we've all seen. It's been doing the rounds on Twitter and WhatsApp and whatnot. It's been acted on. There's, in fact, a delegation that's either going to America or has already left for America, investigating it right now. What's the difference with Canada? Well, it may be the same investigation, but the evidence is not the same. These are two different, one is an attempted murder, the other is a murder. It may be part of the same thing, but you can't just combine these plots all up together.
Okay.
The problem that we're facing again is, even if you heard Stuart Wheeler's statement, he started off saying evidence. He ended up that statement. If you play it again, you will see he ends up again saying allegations, right? And herein lies the problem. I think what is much more important today is the strength of the statement that's come out, that's all but declared Canada an official state sponsor of terrorism against India. It's literally done that. There's no more, other than the legal actions now to follow it up on sanctioning Canadian businesses or seizing Canadian investment, their pension fund investments in India. There's very little left to actually add to that.
And considering India and Canada are very close strategic partners, it just defies logic why Justin Trudeau, in his desperation for Khalistani votes, would do what he's doing, unless you just take this as a very desperate war for survival. Mr. Saini, if you can hear me from Toronto in Canada, has Canada provided any evidence to India? Any evidence? Okay, give me some time to try and reestablish that link with Mr. Saini. But Shiv, are we to understand Canada has provided no evidence to India? Justin Trudeau is facing trouble within his own party. He's facing trouble with the coalition. There are some voices that seem to indicate that he may or may not survive his full term, and he's in trouble. Pierre Poilievre, the opposition leader, is on a high, and this is why there's pressure on the China front. China interfering in Canada, and he just wants to turn it around to appear to be a strong man, that they've taken a hard line on India. It just goes on to show these are desperate diversionary tactics, Shiv, aren't they?
Yep. Gaurav, I don't think anyone is going to argue that India needs to prove anything in any kind of global perception battle as far as evidence supplied by Canada is concerned. India, as a responsible country, with a very structured foreign policy and foreign office, has said repeatedly on the record on multiple forums that no evidence has come from Canada. This, as Abhijit correctly pointed out, is something that is easily proven or disproven. So there is no question of whether they have or whether they have not. Justin Trudeau's own compulsions when it comes to the international order, when it comes to his own survival, have been laced with a kind of desperation since September last year. Abhijit calls him a pyromaniac. Yes. I have never seen a clumsier pyromaniac when it comes to dismissing all of the other sort of elements that may have something to do with this political future, rather than simply just open this extremely tricky diplomatic front with India. He's basically found a country since September last year that is in no mood to think twice about responding in a very hard manner. There were actually people within India who were thinking that Lok Sabha election ke baad India will have to climb down, because the shorter numbers of the central government mean they'll have to take a softer diplomatic stance. They'll have to, provide some concessions as far as Canada and the United States are concerned. Abhijit is absolutely right, because the way India deals with Canada and the United States are different because the relationships are qualitatively different. As far as Canada is concerned, India has shown, in my view at least, remarkable consistency in saying, we are not going to take this nonsense. You've got something to share it. Don't play games with us.
Let me also bring Sushant Sareen into this conversation, senior fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Sushant Sareen, how do you look at these developments? India has expelled the acting Canadian High Commissioner and 6 top diplomats. How do you look at these developments?
Look, yeah, Gaurav, Canada is the new Pakistan, really. It's very clear. We'd done this with Pakistan earlier, if you remember, when there was a deputy high commissioner and then he had been PNG'd.
Yeah.
So we are now doing it to the Canadians. And frankly, this relationship is at its nadir. It's where our relationship with Pakistan is. Only there's still some travel taking place between India and Canada. I don't know how long that will continue. Next steps could be that you just shut down your consulate. You ask the Canadians to shut down their consulate because look, all the charges, and most of them are utterly nonsensical, especially the RCMP, press conference, which was happened with so much of urgency, which nobody has ever seen in Canada earlier, right? What was this urgency for this cop come and blurt out certain things, which is basically regurgitating what has happened in the past, and he's insinuating certain things without any evidence whatsoever, right? It's just basically hurling charges against South. We are South Asians, we are Indians, so you call us Indians, okay? Don't lump us with the Pakistanis or those Bangladeshis or anybody. But look, here is the thing. So now the thing is that the relationship has reached its nadir. India has a lot of grouse against Canada, not just for the activity of the Khalistanis in Canada, but the activities of Khalistanis in Canada inside India. And we also have very serious suspicions that the Canadian High Commission staffers have been involved, or their consulates have been involved in some of this activity. So if the Canadians can hold certain, inquiry committees, so should India. And we should name and shame the Canadians who have been involved in this. And you shut down the consulate in Chandigarh, for example. What is a Canadian consulate doing in Bangalore? Okay, we can shut down ours in Vancouver. Just too bad many of the people have to travel to Ottawa to get a visa or whatever. We should shut it down wherever we need to. We don't need to keep a big
imagine
a business with Canada anyway.
Absolutely.
If that's the
consulates, the work of the consulates is to ensure that you benefit each other's people. It is for the benefit of each other's people. But just how desperate is Justin Trudeau as a political leader? Just how naive is he as a political leader for his political survival? He's messing around with such an old strategic partnership. But then his father did the same. And who better than Terry Milsky to tell us that, When it comes to the Kanishk bombing, the Air India Lockerbie bombing, his father did not investigate it. The son, you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The son is as bad, if not worse, when it comes to India-Canada relationship. He's actually taking it to the ground. But is this because 20 of his own MPs have signed a letter against him saying they have no confidence in him, sir? Is that your appreciation, or is this diversionary tactics because of all those allegations of China's interference in Canada?
As Trudeau sees it, look, first off, you're right. For 40 years, Canadian politicians, especially the Liberals, but all parties, have been whistling past the graveyard, ignoring and pandering to and tolerating not just threats of violence, but actual violence, going all the way back to the Air India bombing, 331 completely innocent civilians wiped out for nothing. So let's make sure that isn't forgotten. Second thing, on this question of evidence, Trudeau sees this very differently. You're speculating about Canadian politics and what his motivation might be. That's fine. I've done the same myself. But from his point of view, he would be a bad prime minister if he looked the other way at a foreign government currently, according to him, carrying out a murder plot in Canada and killing a Canadian citizen. This is his duty as prime minister. If he failed to take action, his name would that would be dishonorable. That you may laugh at that. You may scoff and say, no, that's not his motivation. Oh, because he thinks that he's going to win re-election if he's nice to the Khalistani. That too is not because there aren't enough Khalistanis. There's this illusion among Canadian politicians that it has to be nice to the Khalistani because that means they're being nice to the Sikhs. And they have not noticed that there's only a tiny minority of the Khalistani. So briefly stated, you can speculate about Trudeau's motives, but beware. And you can also say that there's no evidence. Beware again, because there will be a trial against Nikhil Gupta, who was indicted by the United States for running an alleged murder for hire plot against the leader of Sikhs for Justice and part of the same plot to Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, that's a very detailed and fact-filled indictment, and beware saying that there's no evidence, because when it comes to court, you'll hear a lot. Just read the indictment. Read page 6. Read page 28. Read that American indictment. Then tell me there's no evidence. I don't think you can do it.
Gaurav?
Okay. Let me once again try and raise Sushant. I'll come to you in just 30 seconds. Let me try and bring in Mr. Saini from Toronto if he can hear me this time. Is there any evidence, Mr. Saini, in your appreciation that Canada has shared with India so far in the Nijjar case? Evidence that will stand scrutiny in a court of law? Because expelling each other's diplomats is a very, very serious step unless Justin Trudeau is doing this just for his political survival. Okay, I seem to be having an audio problem with Mr.
Hello.
Saini. Let me bring in Sushant Sareen into this conversation. Sushant, apologies. We've been repeatedly trying to bring in Mr. Saini, but we haven't succeeded. But in your appreciation, Sushant, is this desperation? Is this desperation of Justin Trudeau? Because Jagmeet Singh has pulled the rug from under his feet. His own party MPs are signing letters against him. 20 have already signed. 20 more, we are told, are waiting in the wings to sign. And this is just diversionary fire. Is this what Justin Trudeau is doing? Sushant Sareen.
Yeah, so Gaurav, let me just add something to what Terry was saying earlier, and let me turn that equation around, and I'll come to, because it links up with the question you've asked. Look, I agree that a prime minister of a country has the responsibility to his own citizen, but that responsibility is not just for the prime minister of Canada. That responsibility is equally for the prime minister of India to protect Indian citizens from very pernicious activities that are taking place in India from Canadian soil and are having an extremely negative impact inside India. So that's a shoe which fits on both feet. Okay, number one. Number two, look, I think as far as his political problems are concerned, probably Justin Trudeau, in his wisdom or lack of it, I think more lack of it, thinks that India is a relatively low cost option to target because it gets him a lot of votes of the Khalistanis, which is a pivotal kind of a grouping to try and win that few extra votes, a few extra seats, which can put you in power or keep you in power. And at the same time, what is the expense that he has to incur? And even if he does have something, he thinks probably the Americans have his back. So the Americans will bail him out at the end of it. And they will make sure that nothing goes out of sync beyond a point. So maybe that's his calculation. Because otherwise, even if, let us for a moment imagine that something has happened from India's side. Mature countries, we've seen how the Brits operate on this, and they are the wiliest and the slimiest of all of them. But what do? When they caught a Pakistani plot against a dissident in Holland, they arrested the man who went to kill somebody, and they booked him, they jailed him. But all the other evidence which pointed to the ISI paying that guy was kept hidden. They didn't make an issue of it because they handled it at a different level with the Pakistanis. Now, mature countries, when they see something like this happen, talk quietly behind the scenes and settle this issue whatever warnings they have to do. They don't do it publicly. When you do this kind of public grandstanding, then you are doing politics. You are doing domestic politics using an international incident or international country or international player as a kind of a prop to take forward your domestic politics. So that's what Justin Trudeau has done. The Americans have kind of indulged him. The Americans have played along with it. And the question needs to be asked of the Americans. If Pannu had made a similar threat that he made against Air India, if he had made it against United or he had made it against American Airlines, what would have been the action that the Americans would have taken? If he had put a picture of, say, Donald Trump or of Kamala Harris or of an American diplomat and fired shots at it and called for their assassination, what action the American authorities have taken against him? Why hasn't the same action been taken against him when he has done it to India?
Joe Biden's administration would have been like a cat on a hot tin roof. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. This double standard and double speak of these Western countries, and it's high time it's called out, whether it's the United States or Canada. It's no longer for the white man to pontificate. Abhijit Iyer Mitra, before I bring in Shiv Arur, clearly, if they thought that they could just make tall claims and India would roll over and play dead, I think they've been caught completely on the wrong foot. They just don't know what hits them. But then they just seem to be making it more and more desperate with this desperation of Justin Trudeau, with his own party MPs writing against him.
Well, look, Justin Trudeau, I think, hasn't read a new book in a very long time. This man's education was that he was a bouncer at a bar. Let's not forget that. He's just basically a trained thug. Now, he thinks the India that he's facing today is the same that his father faced down, 30, 40 years back. Now, if you read Terry Milevsky's book, he'll show you that several warnings were given to his father, and the father refused to act on it or extradite the people, claiming that they're Commonwealth citizens. We can't extradite Commonwealth citizens, etc., etc. Some really bizarre excuse. This chap and his party have heavy Chinese funding. So in that sense, he is accurate in that it is the lowest cost option for him because his post-retirement plan depends on Klaus Schwab, George Soros, and Chinese funding essentially for his retirement package. No Indian company is going to touch him with a barge pole after what he's done. He knows this. It is low cost for him. The question is, does he understand that it is very, very, very high cost for Canada? Today, you have $56 billion invested by Canada in Indian firms and securities and things like that. The dividends of that, if it go back to Canada, will almost certainly be used to fund terrorism against India. What if we decide to freeze those assets tomorrow? Where exactly does Canada go from there? he doesn't care, you see, because his personal income and his retirement plan don't get touched at all. It was like Jagmeet Singh, who just wanted to last out. He withdrew support to Justin Trudeau as soon as his 6 years as MP was up, when he could get his parliamentary pension, a full parliamentary pension for the rest of his life, you see. So this is a very standard pattern we're seeing in Canadian politicians. And if this is the kind of politicians Canada wants to vote in, well, best of luck to them. I wish them very well. I wish more Justin Trudeau in Canada and Jagmeet.
Well, you wish him well, but very clearly, Shiv, the way things stand, the moment India expels 6 diplomats, including the High Commissioner, the acting High Commissioner, the Deputy High Commissioner, and 6 diplomats, the moment Canada does this, the only people who suffer are Indians in Canada and those seeking a Canadian visa in India. And Justin Trudeau is actually playing with fire around festival time. This is Diwali time when a large number of people want to travel to each other's countries, and he's playing with fire. He thinks he will get votes, but he could well be adversely impacting India-Canada relationship in more ways than one.
There's no doubt, Gaurav, that both countries' people will suffer. Students will suffer. There are nearly 400,000 Indian students in Canada, nearly 2 million people of Indian origin, including Indian citizens who live and work in Canada. There will most definitely be a lot of pain points. But the fact is, I think what India has done is it has demonstrated consistency on this particular issue. It has called out any possibility of prevaricating or of being inconsistent as far as its response to Justin Trudeau is concerned. And let's be very clear, there are going to be problems. The one point that I wanted to make since September last year, when the government had first taken this hard stance as far as Justin Trudeau's government and its allegations are concerned, Gaurav, is that Khalistani terrorists in Canada, those who attend those rallies in Brampton, those who issue threats, those who put up those tableaus with assassination of Indira Gandhi et al. The government had made a big demonstration and a bit of a promise, really, that each of those people would be identified, their properties would probably be seized, their assets would be confiscated here in India. I don't know if that has actually happened. I don't know if there's been any follow-up as far as that is concerned. Now that this huge collapse in diplomatic relations has actually happened between the two countries, and taking off on Sushant's excellent point that while Terry talks about evidence that may come up in court once these cases actually go to court, what about the anti-India things that have been done from Canada? I think now's also the time for India to bite the bullet and do some of those nuts and bolts follow-up issues, like taking action against people who've been identified as being involved in Khalistani terrorism against India. Because once you turn the screws on their land, zameen, ghar, remittances, family assets, property here in India, you will have hundreds of thousands of people falling in line in Canada. That is the
quick interjection, Gaurav, very quick.
Yeah,
and high time government of India should have done that. Absolutely. Okay, Abhijit, you want to come in? I've got Prabjot Singh joining me from Canada, but before he does,
so the
go on, Abhijit, complete your point, sir.
The RCMP has released a statement which is as nebulous as credible allegations. The statement says, investigations reveal that Indian diplomats and consular officials based in Canada leveraged their official position to engage in clandestine activities, wide variety of entities, collect information, and the depth of criminal activity orchestrated by agents of the government, felt it was imperative to confront the government of India. The RCMP's own official statement here, Gaurav, is not saying that any link was found to the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. The RCMP statement itself.
Yes.
So I wonder what kind of evidence they have presented.
On the basis of this.
Yes. Idi Amin's police was more scientific and investigative than this joke of essentially what's a third world country masquerading around as a first world country. Canada nahi banega Khalistan, Canada ban gaya Pakistan.
Absolutely. I mean, just imagine.
Gaurav, just one sentence.
Shameful for a country like Canada. Yes, Sushant. Go on, Sushant.
The RCMP chief has acted worse than a local sub-inspector of, Haryana police or Punjab police. the kind of statement he has made. So, for example, what is a diplomat's job? Look, we've all deal with international affairs. What is a diplomat's job? A diplomat's job is to interact with people and ferret out information which helps his government. That's not spying. That's not espionage,
Yes.
right? That's the normal thing which a diplomat does, and he files a report. If Indian diplomats are doing it, or if they're trying to cultivate some kind of an influence in the sense which promotes India's interest, how don't the Canadians do it? Why are they running their NGOs out here? What are those NGOs being run out here
Yes.
for? Are they so bothered about India suddenly? After having massacred their own indigenous population, they are suddenly bothered about what's happening in India, that they want to do welfare activity in India. They take 3 times the fees from Indian students, right? Then what they take from their own students, we are a poor third world country, okay?
Yes.
They want to do welfare out here, but they charge Indian students 3 times the amount of fees. They want to do welfare out here. So, this RCMP statement is a
Absolutely.
load of crap because it has nothing specific, as Abhijit says. It's just insinuations, it's just suspicions being heard,
Absolutely.
nothing specific.
It's like a white man's word, that India is supposed to take a white man's word as gospel and then roll over and play dead, or just say, Ji Huzur, you've said it, so we will follow. If that is what Canada and Justin Trudeau think, they couldn't be further from the truth. They need to wake up. They need to smell the coffee. This is 21st century India, and we go by the rules. Let them show us evidence, and evidence that will stand scrutiny in a court of law. And I want to bring in Prabjot Singh joining us from Canada. Prabjot Singh, in your appreciation, sir, and you've been tracking the story very closely, I want to understand from you, has Canada given India any evidence, not credible allegations, that will stand scrutiny in a court of law where every bit of evidence can be linked up to form a watertight case?
Yeah, you are right. I read the statement by Ministry of External Affairs, and they say no evidence has been given by Government of Canada to India to work on that lead of especially Hardeep Singh Nijjar's case. But what the Canadian government is trying to do now is they are trying to follow the lead of an attempt on Gurpatwant Pannu and the guy who was arrested, Mr. Gupta. And the way he made some revelations, and that's given strength to Canadian claim, okay, yes, there is some evidence available of involvement of government agencies in
No,
Niger's case. Whatever.
I am sorry. That's a fishing expedition. That's a fishing expedition. Where is evidence? They are saying he said something. Yeah, okay, Sushant Sareen wants to come in, Shivarur wants to come in, but first Sushant Sareen and then Shivarur. Mr. Prabjot Singh, court goes by evidence and not usne kaha tha. This is 21st century India. I think everyone should read the law and go by law. Where is corroborating evidence? Sushant Sareen, go on, sir.
Yeah, so I think what Mr. Singh is saying is factually correct in the sense that where the problem I have is that you never had the evidence when you blurted out that India has been involved in Nijjar is a low life anyways. No matter who killed him, they probably did good to the world by killing the guy. But the point is this, that when the Canadians leveled their allegations against India, they claimed they had credible evidence or there were credible allegations. Okay. After 6 months, when the Americans draw up a second case, this has nothing to do with the Nijjar case. Where is the linkage between the Nijjar case and this particular case? Now,
Yes.
I can say that somebody plotted something in some third country and that has a bearing to some other case. That's not evidence. That's as you very correctly said, that's a fishing expedition. So you leveled the allegation, you hurled whatever you had to hurl. For 1 year, we kept asking you, please give us specific information on what you are accusing us of. Please give it to us. They never gave it to us, right? Now they are
Okay.
suddenly RCMP, and apparently Abhijit is saying that RCMP has deleted its statement. So what kind of a cop force is this that releases a statement then deletes it? How does that work? What does it say about their credibility then?
let me bring in, that's a very pertinent point you make, and Mr. Prabjot Singh stays with me. Herb Dhaliwal is a former member of parliament and a former federal cabinet minister. In 8 years, he's had 4 portfolios, including senior minister for British Columbia, who joins me on the broadcast. Mr. Dhaliwal, has Canada shared any evidence with India? Does Canada have any evidence, or is just linking it to the Pannu case a fishing expedition on the basis of which 6 diplomats have been expelled from India and multiple are being repatriated and recalled from Canada, sir?
Well, first of all, let me say it's unfortunate that India-Canada relationship is so low. When I was a member of parliament and the minister, we worked very hard to build a strong relationship with India. I had very excellent relationship with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, with Prime Minister Indrajit Gujral, and many of the members of parliament and chief ministers in India. We had a great relationship, and I was honored to work with them. Now, this is a very unfortunate situation. Canada has provided evidence to India on this situation. What they're saying is it's not credible. Well, that's very subjective, what is credible or not. The US government has provided evidence as well. India, if they really want to be part of the
let's keep the
Western
US
world,
government,
listen,
sir, give me a moment. Let's keep the US, no, India is a part of the world, and India does not need Canada's permission to be a part of the world. That's not the point. Let's leave the US case aside.
Let me finish.
What evidence has Canada provided, sir?
Please don't interrupt me while I'm talking.
Sir, I've asked you a specific question. What evidence has Canada provided? What evidence has Canada provided?
Please do not interrupt me. You asked me to come on the program.
Sir, my question is very specific. Sir, you've had great relations with Indian chief ministers. I'm sure you've had great relationship. I am sorry, sir. You've had great relationship with Indian chief ministers. Punjab chief minister gave a list of terrorists in Canada. If that great relationship is so great, what action have you taken against that list that Punjab chief minister had provided to Canada?
If India wants to be part of the Western nation, and not only Canada, the US, and many other countries, when things like this happen, expect the full cooperation of the other country. Unfortunately, Canada, US, other countries have not got the cooperation of India, which is unfortunate. And it doesn't speak about the Indian people. Let's be clear. This is not about the India people, who have tremendous amount of regard, respect, and
sir, I asked you a very specific question, and you're dodging my question.
No, I'm not dodging your question,
Punjab chief minister asked a very, he submitted a list. You are, sir, with due respect. With due respect, India gave a list of terrorists in Canada. What action has Canadian government taken against those terrorists in Canada who are harming Indian interests living in Canada? I am sorry, if Canada wants to be a part of the new dispensation in the world, Canada has to take action against terrorists, sir.
Sir, will you shut up and listen? Shut up and listen, please.
Oh,
you got a big mouth. You talk too much.
Riled.
Start listening.
You got riled because I asked you facts.
You might learn something from listening.
I asked specific questions.
You might learn something from listening, sir. Please listen and talk less.
Sir, you might give me some specific answers for me to learn something. And you might learn some civility, sir.
Just shut up and listen, sir. You might learn something. Okay? International law. India has to make sure that it complies with international law. We have laws in our own country. We can't just say
Canada too has to comply with international law. I am sorry, sir. Punjab chief minister gave, Captain Amrinder Singh gave very specific evidence. I want you on my show, but not to blabber, sir, with due respect. I want you on my show, but I want you to answer on facts, which unfortunately you are unable to do because you are not giving me facts. Let me bring in Shiv Arur quickly for 2 seconds on this broadcast as I ended. Shiv, very clearly, Captain Amrinder Singh gave a list of terrorists, India's most wanted terrorists in Canada. Canada has taken no action. And this again, Mr. Dhaliwal seems to be giving exactly that so-called white man's perspective that if you want to be a part of the first world, you follow our orders. And Shiv, that clearly is not happening in today's day and age.
No, I don't want to engage on the point of whether India needs anyone's permission to be part of the world order. India is a part of that world order. It's a an unignorable element of the Committee of Nations. There's no question about it. So that's a bit of a platitude. The more important closing point I'd like to make, Gaurav, is that India hasn't just provided lists. India has provided dossier after dossier, and not now, not under the Modi government, under previous administrations. For God's sake, under the Indira Gandhi administration. Since then,
Yes.
dossiers and lists have been provided to the Canadian government. And, maybe Abhijit or Sushant will be able to tell us better. But I am not aware of a single instance in which any specific action has been taken against, persons of interest that India has highlighted through official channels, through diplomatic channels, to the Canadian government across their administrations, past and present. So Canada has a terrible track record of doing this
And
sort
let
of
me
thing.
take this to Abhijit.
Gaurav, let's not forget, Terry Milevsky's book has listed
Abhijit,
out
go on.
how incompetent and third world the Canadian RCMP are. Remember how badly they botched the investigation? How Mr. Herb Daliwal's own boss, Jean Chrétien, and tanked the investigation. How his previous leader, Mr. Justin Trudeau's father, was complicit in the entire thing pretty much. He knew what was happening.
Trudeau,
he was
yeah,
warned
go on,
what
sir.
was happening. Then he actually came and lied on your program. He wants to teach you something, and he lied shamefacedly on your program. He said there has been no cooperation with America. There's actually a team. There has been heaps of cooperation with America. There's an Indian team headed to America right now to do our own investigations out there. The Americans have been to India. I don't know why you're getting such a clueless joker on your program who's completely out of touch with reality and thinks we need his approval to get into anything on any international stage.
You're absolutely right, and I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. Sushant Sareen, Shiv Arur, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Terry Milevsky for joining me on this India Today special broadcast. Many thanks. We will be tracking the story very, very closely, but very clearly, India in 21st century does not need a white man's commands on being a part of this new world order or not. We are there and we are rising. We're tracking that story closely.